Hey, Budro.
Hey, Jen.
What are you listening to this week? Welcome to What Are You Listening To, the weekly podcast created to share music and foster positive connections one song at a time. Some of the songs are old, some new, all good. I'm Jenn Tully, and this week I'm joined by an Emmy Award-winning producer and filmmaker from Penny Rock Productions, Budro Partida. Penny Rock Productions specializes in short films, music videos, client commercial production, online promotional materials, and has worked in collaboration with multiple television series. Penny Rock has also recently gone into post-production for a new documentary feature called Bloody and Bruised, The Untold Story of the Back Room. We'll learn more about Budro and his upcoming film, In Between the Music. Also, did you know that now on Spotify, you can listen to the show with the songs we discuss incorporated? Just search for What Are You Listening To with Music. If you're not listening on Spotify, be sure to give the playlist a listen and then tune into our conversation. With that, let's get started. Budro, what are you listening to this week?
Hey, Jen. Well, I know that we're going to be talking a little bit about the upcoming film that we got going on here at Penny Rock, and
Yes.
it's called Bloody and Bruised, The Untold Story of the Back Room. So one of the main bands that was signed out of the back room was the Dangerous Toys from right here in Austin, Texas. So to start things off, we're going to check out their number one hit that actually helped them get a gold record through Columbia Records. And the song is called Teasin' and Pleasin'.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Budro, I cornered you when I first met you because I have been dying to have an episode where I get to talk about like my 80s metal hair bands. And when I saw you, and I was introduced to you through another great movie that you did called Sunset at Dry Creek, which was also about another Austin institution. For those of you that are from the Austin area, Dry Creek Cafe and Boat Dock. And your movie was spectacular. It was one of those films that, whether you were able to go to Dry Creek, like it brought a smile to your face to remember it. And if you weren't, you were sad that you never got to go there. That's what your movie elicited in me. That was the reaction. And so when I heard you were doing Bloody and Bruised, I thought, oh man, like nobody is better suited to handle like this particular club and this kind of music. But you, like this had to have been like a dream come true for you. Tell me about it and why this song is like such a big part of it. Because I think Dangerous Toys were like, they were kind of a staple at the back room. Am I right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that short documentary that you mentioned, I've been in production for Bloody and Bruised since about, God, it was towards right around when the pandemic was really kind of officially kicked off, really. And it kind of gave me the opportunity to really think about what projects I had coming up. And it kind of worked out for me because I had kind of blurted out in another podcast in an interview, like I was being interviewed about a horror film that I was working on and it had come out. And so I got asked, so what do you have coming up next? And I kind of just blurted out, I'm thinking about doing a documentary about the back room. And right away, my producer texted me and says, oh, are we officially doing this now? And so from right then and there, it kind of launched. I lived down the street from the back room and I used to go there all the time. In fact, I want to say that it was probably one of the very first places I went to in Austin as a college kid. And I used to walk there and it was a great venue that had lots of great bands, great crowd. You could go to the one side and enjoy a show, or you can go to the game side and play some pool or video games and have some really cheap drinks. That was another thing that it was really well known for. So you could go there with literally $10 in your pocket or less and have a great night. And I had always kind of just thought I would like to do a documentary about the back room. And so I talked to my co-producer about it, John Jew, and right away we started thinking about who are all the different people that we can get involved with. And so we knew we kind of started setting up a timeline. of events that happened there. And in doing that, we talked to somebody that actually used to work there. So we knew we needed somebody that was on the inside. You know, we knew we needed
Right.
to talk to somebody that had worked there, knew the club from inside and out, that could help us with the history of the club. And that's how we came up with Tammy Moore, our other co-producer and also co-writer. Um, and from there, we also gained Adam Salinas, who's an associate producer, and now we have an executive producer whose name is Ray Segern, who's also in the film as an interviewee, and now joined our core team of putting this film together. So we kind of started shooting tons of interviews just with different musicians, different staff members, and over the span of 9 months, we shot about 60 plus interviews, you know?
Wow.
And so it kind of just, and it was a perfect time because everybody was kind of at home and,
Right.
you know, all the clubs were open. And so we kind of just asked, can we shoot this interview at this one venue? They were like, come on over, you know, do whatever. And
Right.
all the musicians were home. Everybody was home. So we were able to coordinate a lot of these interviews fairly easily. Um, and since then, you know, we've learned, when we first announced this project, people were saying, "Well, who are these guys? You know, are they it's the production company from California? They don't know what they're doing." And so right away, we released a trailer. You know, 4 or 5 months in, and that really gave people a glimpse, a sense of like, "Oh wow, these guys are serious. They actually know what they're doing."
And I will say, if you haven't seen the trailer, listeners, definitely head over to it's on the Penny Rock website, which I'll
Yeah,
give the address for at the end. But the trailer is for sure worth a watch. I think that the trailer is brilliant. And I like spoiler alert, I won't say what it is, but you have to watch all the way to the end. The end
yeah.
of that trailer is magic.
When we
um,
shot that part, I was saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna use that in the trailer."
so good. It's so, so good.
So
And
it,
so,
so
and
in
it,
doing in that history, in finding out that history of the club, you know, I had known who the Dangerous Toys were. I had their cassette when I was a kid. I grew up a heavy
yeah,
metal and punk rock kid, and I knew who they were, but I didn't really know too much about their history, and much less that they had actually come from the back room right here in Austin. So in doing the research and in interviewing Jason McMaster and Paul Idell and a couple other people from Dangerous Toys, uh, we kind of revealed the story of how the Dangerous Toys, yes, we talk about their history of their previous bands and stuff, but we also find out that, you know, they actually played the second South by Southwest in 1988,
wow.
and kind of the stereotypical kind of staple of they're a band playing in a club and there's an A&R guy, A&R woman actually, that was in the club and said, we want to give you guys a record deal, like kind of like the classic dream
Wow.
for a musician. And that's what happened to them. And actually Jason McMaster told us that, you know, he was kind of like, whatever, you know, this can't be real. Like, hey, go talk to the guys, go talk to the band over there, they're the real suckers. And
Right.
so he kind of blew it off. But little did they know that only a couple months later they were flown out to California. They were shooting a music video, and they ended up shooting the music video for Teasin' and Pleasin', which ended up going to #1 on MTV. And eventually, once they signed with Columbia Records, they ended up getting a gold record out of that. And so it just kind of launched their careers. You know, really, that was kind of what the back room was.
And it's so, like this was a time it's almost like we have to go back a little bit and paint a picture, right? This is like 1989 when the song is out, when it's on heavy rotation on MTV. MTV's like it's not brand new anymore, but it's
Mhm.
still like in its heyday. I mean, that's what we did after school. We went over to
Yeah.
somebody's house, we turned on MTV and we just watched videos, or we had appointment viewing like you and I'm sure enjoyed Headbangers Ball
Oh,
together.
absolutely.
Um
Yeah.
like all of the things, like this was just such a integral part of how we grew up back then. Like that's
Mhm.
what MTV didn't have shows, they only played videos. So it's funny because I was thinking about this episode and how much I've been wanting to talk about this genre, and I was laughing at just thinking of what a different time and place it was back then. And every show I talk a lot about lyrics and how important they are to me. And then I realized for this episode, except when I'm talking about this genre is all about like the visceral reaction,
Yeah.
right? Like the emotions and the feelings it stirs. And I really don't even care what they're saying most of the time. Like now it's interesting to go back and like look at the words. And somebody like a Dangerous Toys were like so tongue in cheek, so double entendre. Like it really is funny to like go back and see what it is that they were saying, but I didn't care about any of that. I cared about the presentation, seeing them in the video. Like again, it was all about just that reaction that
Yeah.
the music gave me, and I loved it.
And and when you say kind of their lyrics, they were kind of tongue in cheek. They were part of what was called at the time, and now it's more of a popularized term, but what was kind of known as sleaze rock.
Yes.
Motley Crue was kind of like big on that, and
Yeah.
Rat and Poison. So and it was kind of like these guys are partying and they're having a good time, and they kind of fit in that whole little genre of sleaze rock. And now it's also at the time. Now it's currently known as old man rock,
Right.
and I guess old woman rock. But like at the time, it was sleaze rock. But they were kind of, they were very loose with, they would come up with songs. And one of the main songs, another song that, I know we're not playing it, but another important hit that was for them was, going back to tongue in cheek and kind of like wink, wink, was they had a song called "Sporting a Woody,"
Yes.
and we actually used that. That's actually in the opening title sequence of the film to kind of,
Yes.
and it's the entire opening credits is cut to that song, but I think that helps set the tone for the entire film of what this backroom place was and how it was important to a lot of up and coming bands. And it kind of served as an incubator, to help these bands kind of cut their teeth and really
Right.
help form themselves as a band. And at the same time, it was also a venue that had all these rolling road shows that big names came through there, when they were still either, starting off or on the way down. But, Raven, Megadeth, those were some of the first shows in the mid
Wow.
80s. But, eventually, the Ramones, and then once it got into the grunge and alternative stuff, Jane's Addiction, Pearl Jam, famously Pearl Jam played to like less than 50, around 50 people,
Wow.
at the back room. All these huge bands went through there. Marilyn Manson, and it pretty much through most of the early 2000s, there were still pretty big names going through there, until its actual demise in 2006. So the film kind of explores. It's basically a history lesson. It's a kind of a fun history lesson to kind of, show a younger generation where current artists, kind of where they came from a little bit, and kind of teach them that, what, it wasn't all about digital downloads, and it wasn't all about just, hey, we're going, I'm checking in on Facebook to see where we're going to go tonight. It's, there were these bands that were working hard to make flyers and put out CDs and, going not door to door, but like person to person that like, hey, come to
Yeah.
our show. They were really working the pavement to say,
It
so to
was a
speak.
totally different kind of audience acquisition back
Yes,
then.
yes. And then they were, and they were working hard to like just get people in the door so that they could make a little money, make a little bit of beer money maybe.
Right. Well, and
But
then once they did, they really had to deliver in terms of presentation. And I feel like places like the back room gave them a chance to really hone in on how to deliver
yeah,
in the set in like a presentation sense, because it was the time of music videos. It was the time of like, the power ballads and the big loud rock shows. Like you had to be able to match that visceral reaction with a performance, right? And so places that allowed artists to kind of hone those performances into perfection or into what they are that we see on MTV now,
right.
I think it's just it's you can't overlook the importance of what a venue like that brought for artists like that in a time when presentation was paramount, right? Almost more important than anything else.
Yeah,
And I think that Dangerous Toys are like a great band to showcase that, and different, totally different from your second pick. So tell me what your second song was.
So, uh, the back room helped formulate and form a lot of musical acts that got to be well known and got signed. And one of those other bands that got signed out of the back room was a band called Pariah. Now, the reason we showcase Pariah in the film and why it's important as well is because they're actually kind of the opposite of Dangerous Toys. And yes, they ended up getting signed out of the back room, but there lots of trouble happened with their record, but they did end up getting a record, and I'll talk about it more later. But they're when they finally did release a big time record, they got signed out of the back room by Geffen Records, and
Okay.
one of their big hits from Pariah, originally from San Antonio, but kind of formed themselves in Austin at the back room. And they came out with a album called "To Mock a Killing Bird," and off that album is a track called "Powerless."
Yes, this one, like again, so many things, so many emotions and things to say. I had no idea they were from San Antonio, just like I had no idea Dangerous Toys was from Austin.
Mhm.
Like that was news to me until you and I started chatting. And I do also have to give props to this album name. To Mock a Killing Bird
Yeah,
is a rad name for an album. I'll fight
yeah,
anybody who argues with me on that. That is a great album name.
yeah. And the thing is that they were a really great band. Unfortunately, things turned out differently for them, and that's one of the other things that we explore in the film because, and it's public knowledge that you know the band broke up, and the reason they broke up was because of one of the founding members of the band was Sims Ellison. Um, Kind of a short Reader's Digest version of it is basically the band got signed by Geffen Records, but this was at a time when you know grunge alternative was starting to kind of take over, and heavy rock wasn't as big, and hard rock like Pariah wasn't going to be. It was kind of like going into the past, and so
Right.
Geffen. What eventually happened was because they were so busy with really perfecting Guns N' Roses Use Your Illusion albums. Axl
Mhm.
Rose and the promoters, they all really wanted to make that album perfect because they knew that they had a limited time to really release that record. And what happened was Geffen Record eventually they released Pariah's album, but eventually dropped them from the label. And it's kind of there's lots of speculation as to why that was. You know, and what exactly happened. But unfortunately, when that happened, Sims Ellison, who is the bass player for the band, he and his brother Kyle, along with the other members, it was a time that was filled with a lot of turmoil for the Ellison brothers. And unfortunately, after ending some relationships and some other things, Sims Ellison ended up, taking his own life.
Yeah.
So the band immediately broke up, and the band members went on to other things. And that was one of those bands that could have been really, really great, but unfortunately, the timing of things and with the record label, it just didn't work out. But some good did come out of that, and that the Sims Foundation was formed, and that's
Yes.
actually around to this very day here in Austin, that they help Austin musicians and their families, uh, kind of with their mental health and their mental well-being, and very much like the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians that takes care of the physical side of musicians and artists. This takes care of their mental state and how they're doing, and make sure that they get some help if they need it.
And
So at
it's
least,
a great organization too.
yeah.
I'm really glad you shouted them out. Sims Foundation is fantastic. So is Health Alliance for Musicians. Like those are both. I'll put links to both nonprofits. And again, too, we always say this anytime we talk about suicide or people that have taken their own life. If you or anybody that you know is struggling, please remember that there is help at 988. That is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. So please, if you or anyone you know is struggling, 988 is there for you. And I think it's important that we share the stories of musicians that went a different direction or didn't have the fairy tale that you would hope to, the way Dangerous Toys did with the A&R rep discovering them, right? Like, you can't ignore the stories that didn't turn out to be Cinderella stories,
Exactly.
right? And this is a band that like music to break stuff to, right? Like, anytime I think of Pariah, that's what I think of. But then in a song like Powerless, like, you have that, you can hear this pain, you can hear what they're going through. And then at 2 minutes in this song, you get this great surprise, like, electric guitar solo that you think, like, is the song over? What's happening? Are we slowing down? Then the drums kick in again and you're just like right back to it. It's just brilliant. Like, it's why I love this genre. I think it's so underrated, and also too the social commentary wrapped into some of these songs. Like, and I'm not saying like some of the sleaze rock or the hair bands that we talked about, but if you want to get into like the lyrics, or you want to look at social commentary from that time period, I think you can find that in a song like Powerless, right? Like, you can see some of those things. And I think that that's really important. And oftentimes bands in this genre get kind of kicked to the curb, I think, for being simple or too loud or not really saying anything, or all about excess, or, toxic masculinity or whatever. And yes, there's all of that. But I think you can still like music, even if it's problematic, or even if it has themes that don't resonate today. I don't think that means you have to like lock it away and never talk about it, right? I think that's how things never change, right? If you never talk about it or you refuse to look at it, nothing's ever going to be different.
It was, back then, the hair metal and the heavy metal was kind of seen as what was it that was scaring parents at the time?
Yeah.
And what was it that was considered dangerous,
Yeah.
And eventually that ended up kind of transitioning into rap. Rap was considered dangerous, and what was it stating, and then so it's just an interesting thing that we also kind of explore in the film is towards the end of the Backroom's life, we kind of explore kind of the aspect of, well, the Austin music scene was changing. Not just the actual music, but the physical locations of where people could go see certain types of music.
It's true.
And then so by that point, by the mid 2000s, a lot of the music had already shifted downtown. Not a lot of it was coming to the east side, and the manager's son at the time, who Sean McCarthy, who was one of the day managers and one of the general managers towards the end of the club's life, his son started booking hip hop shows, and the crowd started being different, and the audience part, audience attendance was changing, and then eventually in 2006, people were saying, well, it's not happening as much anymore. It's just not as fun. And eventually it was decided to close the club down. So people are still there's lots of speculation as, well, was it the rap scene? Was it the hip hop scene? Was it just a different time that, it was time for the music scene to change? The landscape of Austin music was changing, nobody really knows why. Was rent, just being on the property,
yeah,
ungodly expensive, and just decided to close it down. Nobody really knows why it closed down, but still, it's still an interesting fact that obviously the music changed, and then eventually the club ended up closing. But a lot of people still miss it, and a lot of people still remember it very fondly, and that's why I'm making the film. Is number one, for the people that were there,
right,
and people that experienced it, and number two, to kind of help. I see young people all the time. They post, stuff from Emos East. A lot of people don't know that Emos East
Yeah.
That's where the back room was
That's where it
located.
was. Yeah.
And they tore it down and they built Emails East on top of it. And so I've always kind of jokingly said, I want to grab these kids by the shoulders and say, do you realize the holy ground that you're standing on? Do you
Yes.
realize how many people and musicians and artists and Austin icons have gone through these premises and we're through and
That was part 1 of Jenn's interview with Budro Partida. Join us next week to hear the rest of the interview and Jenn's pick.